What if the emails that keep you up at midnight aren't about work at all, but about who you're becoming under pressure? Today's conversation is about power, pain, and the moments that quietly shape us as leaders. If you've ever questioned a boss, doubted yourself, or wondered how empathy survives in high stakes environments, this episode might change the way you show up tomorrow morning. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan. I'm Dan Peters, psychologist and leadership coach. This show is all about bringing hope, connection, awareness, and wisdom through meaningful conversations that inspire us to be better versions of ourselves and have a positive impact on humanity. This is your space to pause, reflect, and reconnect with who you are, what you care about, and who you want to be. We have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. Today, I am speaking with Mita Mallick. Mita is a change maker with a track record of transforming culture and business. She gives innovative, culturally resonant ideas a voice and serves customers and communities with purpose. She's had an extensive career as a multicultural marketer in the beauty and consumer goods space, being a fierce advocate for including and representing Black and Brown communities. Her book, Reimagine Inclusion, Debunking 13 Myths to Transform Your Workplace, is a Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller. And her new book, which we'll be talking about today, is The Devil Emails at Midnight, What Good Leaders Can Learn from Bad Bosses. Mita, welcome to the show.
Thank you. You almost laughed saying the title. People get a chuckle out of it. I saw you. You held back. I appreciate it.
I did. And I was ready for it. I read it, but it's just like, it's so good. I didn't say it. That was the first time I said it out loud. And
thank you.
Kudos to you. Not only congratulations on the book, also making it so accessible and so intriguing and real, all based on your own personal experiences.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
So I was listening to the podcast that you co-host, which was May of 2024, Brown Table Talk with DC Marshall and yourself. And you were talking about, I clicked on it because it was how to survive a toxic box. And which okay. And then when I listened to it, I realized that that was your book. Like that was the beginning of your book. I think you were probably writing your book. And then one step further is the book came out of your journal, all of your journaling that you were doing on about your ideas about dealing with bosses, how to help people deal with bosses. So was that, where were you in the process at that time?
I mean, I've been in this process for a while. I've had a number of bad bosses, toxic bosses we can go through. And I'm sure as a psychologist, you have a perspective on that and those labels. But the moment that I actually came up with the idea for the book was about 2 years ago. My mother's home was pretty badly flooded and almost destroyed in Boston. And she's back in her home and happy, and it's been rebuilt. But if anyone's been in a home that has been ravaged by water or fire, it is traumatic. So I'm in my childhood bedroom trying to save things, soaked Barbie dolls that I thought I'd sell on eBay and make money off of. I have trophies and medals, all these things we hold on to from our childhood days or our parents hold on to for us. And I found this notebook. Speaking of journals, I love a good journal. People will ask me, like, what's the big tech tool you're using these days? Yeah, I'm on Claude, ChatGPT, Notion, but I love a good notebook, like an old school notebook and a pen. And I love to journal. And I found a journal from my 20s, and it was a career journal. And in this childhood soaked bedroom, it's this journal that was saved top of the closet. And it's vignettes of all these 3 particularly bad bosses I had. Nicknames, stories, lots of emotion coming out of the page. And I was driving away with my mother from her home. And I thought to myself, this is a mean girl burn book moment, right? What if I'm in someone's notebook? Like that's actually what I started thinking about. It was like, it's so easy for me to be naming people after Disney villains and Marvel characters, which of course as a writer I enjoy.
Yes.
But I've been micromanaging Mita. I'm sure someone called me Maleficent. And so that was really the genesis of the book, that bad bosses aren't born, they're made, and we all have the potential and capability to be a bad boss.
Well, that is a great origin story. Terrible circumstance that created that. I'm glad your mom is back in her rebuilt home. But what an authentic real moment. And that's what you just said is one of the things that I really appreciate about you, and also says a lot about your character and personality, which is you first went to, oh my gosh, what does this say about me? And what kind of boss have I been? And in graduate school, we learn that there are like often these different types of people. I remember learning this in graduate school, and it's like there's these one type of people that are a lot of people that is like, what did I do? Right? What did I do? And there are the other types of people who are always, what did you do? Right?
Yeah.
There's the people who like take responsibility overly so, and there are people who blame overly so. So now that was only three bosses with different names and bad boss characters. And of course, in this book, we now are up to 13, right? So you had a lot of career, you had a lot of current experiences in between. I'm just curious now, of those 13, because these are prototypes, right? These are archetypes.
Yeah.
How many would you just say off the top of your head were the ones that would be like, oh, what did I do? Like, what could I do better if they knew about this, versus the ones that are like, what did you do? Who are the blamers? What percent are blamers versus the ones that look at themselves?
I'd say 50-50.
Okay.
I mean, I'd say there's 3 bosses in the book who've had a severe impact on my mental health. And those 3 probably lack that kind of self-awareness. There were other ones, like there are characteristics that I think, we talk a lot about in the marketplace, micromanaging. It's funny, I just said micromanaging Mita. I'm sorry, you're listening to this episode years ago, you worked for me. I was a micromanager. And it is the one habit that comes out, that one toxic habit when I'm under pressure or stress. And yet I hate to be micromanaged. So isn't that ironic? Right. And so I do think with the micromanaging, how much of that could I have actually managed up, right? Which that was a dirty word. You don't manage up, right? It's like politics. You don't do, but there is a part of, it's like, how do I help my job? How do I help my boss, do their job better? Like if I look at it from a positive place, like how do we help each other work better? Then it's not like managing up, managing cross, managing down. It's just like, hey, we're trying to help each other be better in the workplace.
Something I found interesting from a more recent podcast that I heard where you were the guest is, and you just threw this in at the beginning, which was a little bit about your own experiences growing up, and how that might have made you more aware, more attuned to people, which I, of course, will agree with, which was that, you unfortunately had different bullying experiences growing up. So not only, and then you found yourself with toxic bosses, and we're asking the questions like, what is this? Like, what is this? But let's just start with, because you also have compassion for people. And this is from someone who has been mistreated at different points without your life. So how do you think that experience early on, like, has shaped you and led you to, the gift is, the wound is the gift. That came up on a recent podcast, which is like, we bring these things to the work when we can process them and work through them.
Yeah. I knew you were going to ask me this. I was hoping you would, given your background, but I would say, people say to me now, Mita, gosh, you're so empathetic. The book is structured in a way that you feel compassion for some of these people. So you're trying to understand why people behave this way. And, if I could say this now, which is hard to say, if there was ever a gift in being bullied, both physically and verbally as a young child, as a young adult, I would say it is the gift of empathy, because you don't ever want anyone to experience what you experienced. And because of that, I am much more observant in ways that I probably wouldn't have been. I'm always walking into a room to watch for body language. I always look for the things that aren't said, for the things that people don't say, for the way they might react, facial expressions, body language, or those cues to how they might be feeling uncomfortable or excluded, or they don't feel safe enough to speak up. I look for those things. So there's a gift in that. And potentially if I hadn't had those experiences, I wouldn't see the world through that way. I also would say the other thing people keep asking me is, did you have all these bad bosses? How did you work for so many bad bosses? The truth is, when you work in large companies and very large public companies, there are years where you have 3 new bosses in a year. There's a merger and acquisition, someone leaves, someone's let go, right? So the teams are merging, so that happens. But I also, there's a part of me that thinks because I didn't have many healthy relationships growing up with peers or also with people in positions of power, whether that was, the teacher in the classroom, I do feel like I didn't set boundaries.
Mm.
And so I was a target, right? I was a target, an easy target for the bully who was on the playground, who's now in the conference room. And I, in some situations, feel like I attracted these people or I was attracted to them. I
Mm.
will say that.
Okay, that makes sense, like really organic sense from your experience. So that helps clarify something for me, which was, in relationships, we are often drawn to patterns and situations that are familiar to us. And so I would say that that makes sense to me. What didn't make sense to me is when you are being given a boss, or there is a merger or an acquisition, or you're put on a team, you don't choose your bosses.
Yes.
So when you have like so maybe like dotted line people might seek you out because of the boundaries, but
Sure.
hard line people, like that
Yeah.
just wasn't that circumstance.
True. And some of them I chose.
Yes.
Some of them I chose because there were a lot of people ask me now, like, what are red flags in the interview process? I get that a lot. Like, how do you know if you're about to work for a bad boss? I have a whole list. But some of those things I saw, but I ignored because it was a really big brand in the marketplace. It was a sexy title. It's going to look great on the resume, like all of those things. So what if the boss seems a little, dismissing me in the interview, interrupting? So what if there's these flags in the interview process? I can grin and bear it because I'm going to get this on my resume.
Right. That makes sense. So yeah, so boundaries are such an interesting thing, and particularly for empathic people, like empathic people who have had bad experiences, or just highly sensitive people. But particularly, there's a lot of highly sensitive people who have also had bad experiences, and then that just compounds everything. And that is, you want to do the right thing. You're aware of other people's needs. You like also being a performer, an achiever, which I know that, has an aspect of you. And I very much relate to that as well. It's like these things get us in situations, or we find ourselves in situations. And then we start to ask ourselves at some point, why does this keep happening to me? Or why do I keep feeling taken advantage of? Or why do these people think that they could ask me to do this? And why do I keep saying yes? And so was there is there a defining moment for you, or was it cumulative as you were starting to become more aware of these patterns and how you feel and how you wanted to feel, that you started to make some changes?
I think it was a cumulative. I also think, listen, it's very easy for us to sit here in this silo having this conversation, knowing that there are power dynamics in the workplace.
Sure.
And so when I was much more junior in my career, these things were happening. And you sort of see that in the progression through the Devil Emails of Midnight. I think likely as I ended sort of part of the book to talk about Tony Soprano, who is the boss who's nicknamed after Tony Soprano.
By the way, everyone, he's the only one that has like a regular name like Tony. All the rest we'll talk about have other like names, but Tony. There's only one Tony. Yeah.
Tony.
Yeah.
My husband really likes that nickname.
Yeah.
It's a great show. But it's like you could kill the career with one phone call. I think that was sort of to the point where I started to think, oh, wow, like this is what it looks like to be consistently taken advantage of when you don't set boundaries. And I, it's not the like, I'm not going to take a 7:00 call on a Tuesday. Like that's my boundary. Like those aren't, I think now with my children, you teach people how to treat you. And I penned an article for Entrepreneur Magazine for National Daughters Day, and it was an open letter to my daughter, who's 10 years old. And I talked about the incident of the boss I had nicknamed the sheriff, which is early on in the Devil Emails at Midnight, who decided not to learn how to pronounce my full name, which is Mother Mita Mallick, which for all the reasons you might suspect has caused me a lot of shame, joy, pride, embarrassment. And I went through different periods of my life of going by Mita, Mother Mita, Mita. And so I go into the workforce and I'm like, yes, I'm going to go by Mother Mita. And I'm working for this person who's like, I don't want to learn how to pronounce Mother Mita. I'm not going to learn how to pronounce. I'm not going to say Mita or learn how to pronounce
No, he called you Muhammad.
He renamed me Muhammad. Yeah.
Like is the most, right. Like, okay, I'll just, yeah.
No, I mean, and even as we have this conversation, I've written, thousands and thousands of people are reading this book and the story, and I still shrink inside a little bit. Like I cringe. Because why do I cringe? It was Muhammad, go get the sales sample. Muhammad, the agency's here in security. Muhammad, are you coming to lunch? And when you asked me earlier the question around what part of any of these scenarios could you have owned? Right. And that is one where I keep going back to that you teach people how to treat you. And I wish that first time he had said it, I had looked him in the eyes and said, it's Mita. Call me Mita. Directly, clearly, plainly. And if I had done that, maybe he would have moved on to another target in the office, which is the sad part, right? You're saving yourself, but then this person's going to go after somebody else.
Right. And you're an empath and you're empathic. Yeah, right. So
yeah. Or it wouldn't have mattered. He would have kept doing it anyways. I don't know. But that was my, as I do this work and I think about my kid and all of our kids out there, it's like, I don't want them to experience these things. And so what would I say to my daughter is like, you teach people how to treat you. And when they sense that you're not going to put up with that nonsense, and it's worse than nonsense. It's like, I don't even, the word microaggression, macroaggression, I don't know. What do you decide? The everyday aggression. It's, respect is not a workplace luxury. No. It should not be.
No. And that, I mean, there's so many things to say about that. I mean, one thing for him to just call you Mina, like he just doesn't want to like get it right, but he calls you a different name. For it to be racist. Like so overtly racist on top of that is just it's even worse. And the other thing that I hear you saying, which is so often and such a bind for people who are victimized, is going back and looking at and feeling guilty and shameful. What could I have done differently? Right? Like what was my role in this? And I do think it's healthy for people, of course, to have introspection. But here we are, how many years later, right? How long ago did this happen?
Oh, 10, 50.
Right.
It's about,
right. Long time ago. Long time ago. You talk about it a lot. You've written about it a lot, and it's there's still a scar.
Yeah, and it's still fresh. I mean, it's in some ways. I go back and especially for the book, as I was thinking about, because we talked about, I talk about this in The Devil Emails at Midnight. I'm not interested in shaming, naming, blaming people, so I've disguise details and timing. And I hope these people are better bosses. And I hope in some cases, it was joke, people don't need another executive coach. They need therapy, right? Some people really need something more than just executive coaching. So I hope in those cases of the 3 individuals, the sheriff included, who caused me hurt and harm in the workplace, that they are doing much better as leaders now.
And there is our older selves that look back on our younger selves and have the life experience and the wisdom. And so, yes, I get it. Like you wish you would have said that, but like you 10, 15 years ago, like that's a whole different deal than you being in that situation at this stage of your life and career.
And then we talk about the power dynamics, right? I was junior. And, it's really interesting. I go back through my head is like, I have sympathy for the other people who were junior working with me. It was a tough environment to work in. But I wonder about his peers and his boss and what they all were doing as they watched this transpire. And, we spend too much time in our workplaces not to care about each other and not to look out for each other. It's like the New York City subway. You see something, say something. Say something, especially if you have any sort of power in the workplace.
That's the thing, because it takes courage for those that do, lots of courage for those that don't. For those that do,
but it also could be, there could have been a junior marketer working with me at the time who saw this happening, who could have gone to somebody else in the organization who had more power to talk it through with them. So there's all sorts of ways to intervene. And it's never for me, I'm the type of person, gosh, I've done this so many times in my career. I still do it now. I rewind things like a film, and I'll be like, oh, he should have done this. Oh, he should have done that. And it's not too late. If you've seen something like this happen to somebody, you can always go back and check in on them. This happened last week. I've been thinking about, how are you doing? How can I help? It's never too late to intervene.
Is it you've worked in a lot of corporations, a lot of different business environments. Let's talk about safety. because I of course, I completely agree with you, and I have this optimistic lens, realist over as older I get, but optimistic. Like people can do the right thing, and people can speak up, and how safe is it nowadays, and to do that
Sure.
with your career, particularly if you are junior, lack power, go to HR.
There's a cost. There can be a cost. I mean, we're
Hmm.
sitting in an environment right now. We're no longer in a government shutdown. Maybe when this episode plays, I don't know what the state of the world's going to be. I'm not trying to joke because laugh, but otherwise I'd cry. Right? Tariffs. I mean, there's so much, AI. There's so much happening in the marketplace that it's very easy for us to sit here and be like, yes, speak up. Yes, don't. And there's a cost, right? There's potentially a cost to your job. I mean, I've had situations where it's like you're labeled the pot stirrer, detractor, troublemaker because you're speaking up and you're speaking out. But that's why be strategic about it.
Hmm.
Think about if you're seeing something happening and you're the most junior person, can you go to other people that you trust to think
Hmm.
about what the game plan could be?
Hmm.
Because, I actually think that by the time you call HR, it's too late, meaning something has been bubbling for so long and it's not HR's. I mean, listen, I'll defend HR for a second here. HR doesn't own culture. We all own
Hmm.
culture.
Right.
And oftentimes HR gets a bad rap for letting bad actors stay when it's actually not HR's ultimate decision. It's usually the CEO or someone in the business who says, well, I'm going to give Mita a 10th shot. She can
Hmm.
stay. She's the toxic rock star, right? She's providing
Hmm.
too much value to the business. We can't afford to lose her. But I'd
Yeah.
say be strategic about it and think about how are you
Hmm.
going to intervene and what are some steps you could take to try to help. And I also think, in that situation, I just wish more people would have seen me, would have checked in on me, would have said,
Hmm.
I hear this happening. I see this happening. It's not okay. And that would have been a huge support to
Right.
have had that at the time
Right.
this happened.
Yeah, to be seen. Um,
Yeah.
which well, that segues into all of your work in inclusion and the importance of inclusion.
Mm,
And saying this at a time when um, DEI has become a lightning rod word.
sure. I
And
think we're
so,
still allowed to say it.
yeah,
Hasn't
yeah,
been banned yet.
yes, we're saying it. We are
We're
saying it
saying
right
it.
now.
Yes.
And so I want to bring up the word and the
Mm,
term,
sure.
and I want to move to what we're really talking about with inclusion, right? Like let's talk
Sure.
about what it really is, so
Yeah.
the term doesn't detract people from hearing
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the message. And
Mm,
again, that's about, I mean, can't we link that to your experience? Like for you to be seen, for you to be
absolutely.
included.
100%. We've lost the plot when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want to talk about inclusion in the workplace, that context specifically. It means I work for you. I feel seen, I feel valued, I feel recognized. My voice matters, my contribution matters. Most of us are going to work to get a paycheck. Some of us have found our purpose. But the worst moments in my career, I don't know about you, is like I come into work and does anyone know what I do? Does anyone care? Is my boss taking credit? Am I left out of meetings? Or am I not a part of like the social circle at work, like all these things that we go through. And, inclusion for me is tied so much to productivity. And the example is just this: you're the CEO, I'm the CMO, you've hired me to make impact for my genius and expertise, and I'm ready to give 100%. And what happens? I come into work and people ask me, how'd you get to speak English so well? How'd you get rid of your accent? Where are you really from? How come you changed your hair today? Oh my God, your lunch smells so funny. And why do you look so angry? Why do you look so sad? What's going on? Okay, going on and on and on. And the 100% chips away. It's 75%, it's 50%. So now I'm in an environment where I'm actually not able to do my best work and focus on making impact because I'm reacting to all these things that are happening every day at work. I'm showing up ready to react to that rather than the work. And then what's going to happen? My productivity is going to dip. I'm going to seem disengaged. And all of a sudden, I'm painting you out to be the bad guy here. You're going to say, and you might not even know these things are happening, right? It might just
Hmm.
be peers or could be direct reports, things happening on my team. God, she was a top performer. she came recommended through my network, and now we're going to have to put her on a performance plan and package her out. Right. And
Right.
that's why it boggles my mind. We're in a market where people are, well, we'll see it swings from an employer to employee market. That's what markets do. But people are still like, how do we keep our top performers? Like, how do we keep people? It's not no one needs another oversized hoodie. I don't need a water bottle. I don't want a meditation app, right? Inclusion is the number one tool we have to keep people, right? Because I don't know,
Totally.
I've been in moments in my career, I was working on a business that was in double-digit decline for 3 years. And I'm telling you, I never once updated my resume, which sounds crazy, right? But we ended up turning the business around. And like, why did I stay? I felt valued.
Mm-hmm.
People wanted my ideas. We were in it together. And so to me, it just,
That's a
either
great
laugh or cry. I'm
example.
going to
No,
laugh.
that's a great,
Yeah.
I mean, like we are both, we are completely aligned here. I spend a good portion of my life professionally and personally looking around and saying, how do people not see this? How do people not get this? This
Yeah.
is not rocket science. This is not rocket science. When you treat people with dignity, with respect,
Yes.
when they feel valued, when you go the extra mile to care, to make some allowances and flexibility when life happens, like
Yes.
like to your point, no one's looking. And even if you're not like, I mean, the manipulative person would do that to be manipulative. And what we're saying to everyone is, even if you're being manipulative and you're like pulling it off, it still works. But we're not talking about being manipulative. It's actually
Yeah.
about being like a genuine human being.
Yeah.
It seems so simple.
And I am not, if I have that and I work for you, if I have all those things that we talked about, I'm not going to leave for 10, 20, 30,000. Maybe I'll leave for $100,000 more, but there's like, it's hard to put a price on that.
Right.
It's hard to put a price on that because I can make double salary than what you're paying me right now. And
Right.
I can be in one of the extreme examples I share in the devil emails at midnight. And you're like, what did I just do? I need to get out of here.
Yeah. When I have two questions, so I'm going to see which I'm going to throw them out there because they're probably related, and then you take it where you
Sure, of
want to
course.
go. One was when you found yourself drawn into leadership and being a voice, and in your career when it went like from just business to this second part of my question, purpose. So I don't know if those are separate arcs or they're arcs that go together.
That's a really great question. I think my purpose was always there and it found me. There's nothing like the power of exclusion. Wow. Like feeling that throughout my life. And also I was a quiet and introverted, shy child, which won't surprise you based on what I just said about my upbringing. Those are all, I think, three different things, but interrelated. I was also just really obsessed with storytelling and who gets picked on a cereal box and billboard and TV and why don't more people look like me that I see or my family, right? And so it's like who has the power of that pen and why? And so that was always a thread through my life. And then I think when I went into spaces and places and honestly entered a corporate America that wasn't built for someone like me, and I started to observe all these things, and you're like, huh, like I'll never forget the first time I was mistaken for the security guard. And I was an intern and I was just walking across with copies and someone very senior ran up to me and said, "I need my guest signed in." And I said, "Well, oh, okay, well, I'm an intern here. I don't know." And I could see him getting quite embarrassed. And it was interesting because I was the only, one of two interns of color in that
Mhm.
class. And so there were all these things that would happen and I would sort of be like, huh, because I was raised by parents where it's like education at all costs. So you're going to chase that and you're going to do really well. And then no one tells you there's no extra credit in corporate America. There's no titles or trophies. And then you're like, oh, like, huh, I'm doing really great work, but somehow I'm being treated differently. So I think that was always there. And then as I talk about in the Devil Emails at Midnight with the loss of my dad suddenly in 2017, there's nothing like grief that
Mhm.
course corrects your life. And you start to think, well, I've always wanted to write. In fact, I had written 3 novels in my 20s. That's a story for another time that
Wow.
didn't never got published. I had an agent who dumped me really meanly over email, but I
Mm.
sort of had always wanted to. And then you lose someone you love very suddenly and you sort of realize how finite life is. And so then you think, what am I waiting for? And it was through
Mm-hmm.
that grief and really, I would say around 2018, 2019, right before the pandemic, that I started getting on LinkedIn, which is where I have a large community. And I started sharing some of my thoughts and ideas. And then I had the Brown Table Talk podcast. You're like, oh, like this is resonating. I thought this was
Mm-hmm.
just me that was experiencing these things. But
Right.
people write to me and they're like, it's like you're reading my journal. This happened to me. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I really found, this so helpful in my
Right.
own journey.
So that community, and then when you start to realize that you're building community by just speaking your truth and saying what's
Yeah,
important to you,
sure.
it gives even more purpose to
Yes,
the work.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also
Uh,
very healing. It's very
yes.
healing,
Yeah.
as you would probably say
Absolutely.
as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
In a way that I didn't expect it to be. That was not necessarily why I was doing it. I actually was doing it to help other people. I didn't realize how much it would heal me by doing it.
Hmm. Right. And that makes me also think about when we think about trauma and the treatments of trauma and some of the origins of some of the trauma treatments are go back to indigenous cultures, which many
Mm,
still do this, is, after trauma, loss, war, battles, they come together and sing and dance and
mm.
go through
Yes.
their rituals in a way to heal together.
Mm,
And
yes.
so you just said something that's just really important is that so much healing happens when we do come together for a joint cause to talk about difficult things that have been experienced by
Mm,
many. There's this
yes.
joining that's healing.
The power of community and healing, right?
Yeah,
It's the power of
absolutely.
community. Yeah.
So you mentioned grief, and I think this is actually a really important one and interesting one because I was just talking about, hey, let's do the right thing. Let's like be human. Like people have their personal lives and life
Yes.
happens. And you found in your life through grief the impact that it can have on you. And then one of the bad bosses, the story is related to grief because there was so much grief that the boss couldn't show up for you. And so I find it fascinating with like, where's the line, right? With our humanness
Mm,
and how we still have to show up, right? Like we still have to show up and do our job and not be a negative impact on the people that we
sure.
work with.
My hope is that more leaders will be vulnerable in the workplace. And that doesn't mean that we're having a therapy session or you're trauma dumping. But when I did lose my dad suddenly, I went back to work and thought I could just shove grief in the kitchen drawer and I deal with it later when I got home. And it's not, doesn't work that way. It's inconvenient, it's unrelenting, it shows up when you least expect it. And a lot of those bad boss behaviors that I was like, oh, look at all these bad bosses and their behaviors. I embodied a lot of them because I was still struggling with the loss of him. And if I could have been able to say things like, I'm just going to leave a little early today, it would have been my dad's 67th birthday. I am going to take off early on Friday because it's going to be my first Father's Day without him. If I had had the courage to say a few of those things,
Mm,
maybe people would have known why I was showing up that way. If I was off or seemed distant or seemed sad or even seemed angry, and for someone to just say, oh, it's okay.
hmm.
Yes, of course, do that. But I think it's really interesting. Grief is the one thing we all run from because nobody wants to think that their life is finite, yet it is. And so many of us don't know how to grieve. And so that's when you bring up cultures where I think, in the Hindu tradition or Jewish tradition or Christian tradition, I think of all of these cultures where there are moments when someone has passed, transition to celebrate honor. And there can be a lot of moments and traditions that people do to honor that, but part of that is the healing. And I think if you haven't been through that, then you can be the boss who says, and I've been in these situations where it's like, well, wasn't that person's parent sick for a while? They were
Right.
expecting that. So I'm sure they can come back sooner.
Right.
Or, oh, it was her grandfather. Okay, well, we still have that client proposal due on Monday. And you're like, what? because
Right.
you don't know what people's relationships are. Maybe it was my
No.
grandfather who raised me and was actually my father. And so I'm in these meetings and you're like, I can't believe that people are saying these things. And I think they say it when they don't know because maybe they haven't
Right.
experienced it. And I'll say, I remember one of my very close friends lost her mom when we were in her 20s, like just left college. And I was not a good friend. I didn't know how to handle it. And I years later apologized to her and said,
Mhm.
wow, like I don't, like now I know. And
Yes.
I wish I had shown up differently for you.
Yeah. It is interesting. I think it's also related to because people are so we humans are so often averse to the idea of death and
Uh,
the impermanence
Yes.
and the finiteness, and so it's it's like trying to at times consciously or unconsciously hope it wasn't too close to someone. I know that's insensitive in the workplace. It's sort of like, oh, it was just this,
Yes.
or and I know that I have to catch myself even to this day when someone has passed, and I hear about that. I'm wanting to know and sometimes asking the questions, was it expected? Was it sudden? How old was he or she? Was it an accident?
Right.
Like I'm trying
We
to
go
make
into investigative journalist mode. No, no, no.
right
Me
to but to
too.
make sense of it in my mind
Yes, yes,
because
yes.
of how I think aware of the life and the impermanence of life is.
Yeah,
So yeah, so we're interesting creatures, and and it's okay to be uncomfortable. I think it's how do we have that vulnerability to talk about it, right? To talk about even the
yeah.
discomfort.
And I love that you brought that up. I just had a friend whose mother's passed away suddenly, and someone else let me know, and I was in touch with this person. And I'll be honest, I had that human instinct, and it's what I talk about in The Devil Emails at Midnight. Do not ask. Do not why, what, where, when, how. But I do. I love what you said. I think it's just it actually I think comes from a place of kindness and wanting to make sense of it because you're in disbelief that it's happened. But
Right.
you can, I always say, you can have your first thought, hold it, don't say it out loud.
Right.
It's okay to
Right.
think it, but then
Right.
don't,
Right.
okay, but you're like, no, not
Yes.
appropriate. When this person is ready, they will share whatever they want with you.
Yes. Okay, two things I've heard you say and or write. One is that, and this was your experience, that bosses can have the most negative impact on a person's life, mental health,
Yes.
over partner, parents, kids, friends. Like it's like has been identified as like the number one role that can um, have very detrimental effects on a person's life and mental health.
I mean, I agree with that. I feel it. I had seen it circulating in social media. And then the book went to print, and I found the research, which is the exact research not included, a new study in the book. But it is like 66% of people say
Hmm.
that if you were to ask them who
Right.
has the most impact on their mental health.
Right.
And it's the negative impact because what
Right.
we're not talking about earlier is the positive
Right.
impact,
This is the
right?
bad boss. This is the
This is
bad
the
boss.
bad boss,
Right.
but
Right.
it's like imagine, right?
Yeah. Well, and that was the other thing I was going to say. So that's the other part of your quote is that the number one job of leaders is to create good leaders.
Yes, number one job. I don't care what anyone says. I really fundamentally believe that because that's part of your legacy and what you want to do when you've gotten to a certain leadership position. And that's when I'm working with CEOs and C-suite.
Hmm.
You've gotten to this position, you've attained it. What's next? You're bringing up the next generation. Your
Hmm.
job is to coach, teach, and train.
Right.
That's the difference between, I think, a boss and a leader for me. It's very clear that you're
Absolutely.
in service of someone else's career.
Right.
You're thinking about if I can help you get to where I am,
Hmm.
that's a testament to my leadership capabilities and that I can groom the next
Yes.
generation of leaders.
It takes certain personalities to do that. So I want to take this jump on that and take it even farther. So
Sure.
for the folks who are at the C-suite level, and let's say ones that have been there quite some time, so they're farther along in their career, and they're looking at when we think of like the stages of life, generativity, like I want to leave this world and these
Mm,
people in a better place. So that
sure.
tends to happen as we get older. Um, so yes, absolutely. And then I'm thinking about everyone else who's in a leadership position, formal or informal. in all domains and walks of life. The special people, and I wish it wasn't the special people, but I'm calling it the special people, are the ones that, regardless of where they are, their role, their hierarchy, they want the people under them, they are truly mentoring them. They are wanting them to get to whatever their level or skill set is, and even wanting them to surpass them, like the ultimate,
Yes.
like proud, like this. And that is harder in many business and corporate environments that are set up to be highly competitive, to really not be at the top and still mentor someone, if you're at the middle leadership level, to someone that could potentially surpass you.
Well, I would love to see more, money talks, and I'd love to see more companies compensate leaders based on promotion rates. Like,
Ooh, that is
team members.
good.
Are
That is
you
good.
promoting? What's the succession plans? What's the promotion plans? Are you a talent hoarder? Right? Oh, Mita, always the number two, but never the number one, right? Like I was always a great number two, right? And
Mhm,
part of that was
mhm.
I became indispensable, which is not always a good thing.
Right.
But you have talent hoarders. But yeah, incentivize people the right way. Pay money talks. And so I would love to see companies actually structuring performance reviews around that. Like you're actually responsible for promotion, you're responsible for retention, right? Mita just had 5 people leave her team in the last month. Is anyone going to say anything about that? Or is recruiting just going to come in and fill butts and seats? Even though Mita's actually the root cause is Mita, right? That's what's causing all the attrition, but we're going to forget. We're going to pretend we didn't see that.
I love this
Just
idea. I love this idea. I don't know any companies personally that do that. Do you know companies that do that, or did you just come up with that?
I have known certain divisions and certain teams who have, let's say, experimented with it. And I was part of a team who brought the idea to do that. I wish more people would be doing it. I just don't think that, like you said, I don't think that we think that way, right?
It's
In
so
terms of
progressive, though.
leadership.
That
And
is,
I actually hope. I mean, that's actually what you would want more companies to be
mm-hmm,
doing,
mm-hmm.
how you incentivize bosses to be leaders.
Yes. All right, everyone. Let's see what we can do with that one. I love that one.
Anyone listening, reach out to
Yes.
us. I'd love to see that idea come to life.
You also wrote, in a world of AI, we need to lean into being human. And I fully agree with you. And I want
Yes.
to bring in a quote from a quote and something that Brene Brown has talked about
Yes.
lately, which is, of course, like that just freaks people. I'm paraphrasing. That just freaks people out because most people don't really know how to be human. Right. And so this is multi-layered, is how do we, and I've been thinking a lot about this, and leaning into being more human is a lot of what I do in the work that I do. And so from your vantage point, how do you articulate to people what that being human is, and particularly in the workplace?
Yeah. So this is connected to a question I often get asked, which is usually like a whisper, like, Mita, tell me what all these bad bosses have in common. Like, what's the thing that you see? Like, what is it? Because people are all scared. Am I that person? And I'm going to tell you, it sounds so basic and it's so true. It's when people don't take care of themselves. They can't take care of each other. So I don't sleep well. I don't eat well. I don't exercise. I don't have things that spark joy. I am constantly burning the midnight oil. And I think in the race to embrace AI, guess what? I'm not an AI bot. I'm human, right? I am trying to keep up with the pace of change. And I think the biggest opportunity leaders have in the next few years is to try to think about how you can lead your teams through intense drive periods and then rest and recover. Because we're not Uber apps. Like, this is where you're seeing all these high performers, people, burn out. You're seeing more people taking, I know in your field, as you study this, more people taking mental health leave of absences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what is going on? And it's like, I think when you think about the biggest competitive edge people can have, it's like the performance metric of actually well-being. And so how are you taking care of yourself? And then in when you do that, then you can show up and be in service of others. And then you can like be at your peak performance. I'm not athletically inclined. I run fast and that's about it. But it's interesting to watch sports teams, right? And even with sports teams, there's seasons, right? Most people aren't playing a sport if you're watching the NFL, right? There's a season for for it, and there's training. And so that's a really interesting concept. But I think that's what I'm watching for. That I'm going to watch to see. I am really bullish on the people and the teams who are going to lean into that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is an interesting thread that you're identifying as people who don't take care of themselves can't take care of others. And so having some familiarity with some of your bad bosses. So there, of course, are these ones that are super mean. Well, let's just take the boss that didn't know your name. So let's call it the boss that is calling you Muhammad. There's that there's that archetype.
Yeah.
And then there's this other guy who's toxic positivity, like you're awesome, Mita, like good job. So in both of those situations, they're not taking in hindsight, they're not taking care of themselves.
I think that there's and I also will, it's not just the physical, it's the mental piece as well, as you study. I think there's deep-rooted insecurity.
Yeah.
Right. In a lot of these. So your sense of self-worth, how you feel about yourself, not just at the conference room table, but at the kitchen table, because, all the things that we're doing at the kitchen table, they come right back into work, right? And so I think all of those things, and I think many of the worst bad bosses are deeply insecure, wounded individuals, and they're lashing out because they're hurt, and they think that gives them temporary relief and power. And also, by the way, by creating any sort of sense of fear, you create distance emotionally from people. So they actually can't see you. They don't want to see you. They don't want to get to know you. And so I think that's also at play. People's sense of self-worth, like you don't have a strong sense of who you are, or, you're actually lacking confidence, even though you might have the biggest title in the office.
Yeah. Or I have a gender question, because I know over the years, there have been some pretty powerful studies that have shown that, and I might be simplifying here, so correct me, that female bosses are harder on their female employees in many ways than male bosses were with their female employees. Like there was lots of studies that had shown that. And then I have had a lot of clients who have experienced that. And so I would like as an expert in this.
Yeah.
How much of that is like those get blown up, and those are just they might be somewhat of myths, and how much have things changed or not changed in our current hierarchical culture?
Well, I think of it from two lenses. One, there's the scarcity mindset. So you might say, because women aren't in as many positions of leadership power across industry sectors, and there's research for this that'll show us this for anyone listening, that there's a scarcity mindset. Well, there's only so many positions, and so if you're working for me, I'm going to make it harder for you, and I know what it took for me, and I'm threatened by you. Right? There's that piece. I also would argue there's not as many women in leadership positions as men, so we don't have a strong sample size. Are women harder on other women that are working for them more than men are of the women working for them? Or is it just that we haven't seen equal levels of men and women at leadership positions? I can't answer that. I actually think about some of the headlines in the last 5 to 10 years in tech of these companies where CEOs have behaved badly, right? And things have gone really awry. I don't have to some of these are well documented, like We Crashed, or I was watching the American Apparel Netflix series. That was really interesting. I didn't know about that sort of culture and the toxicity of that CEO and the things that he did. So, a lot of them are men.
Right.
But I asked myself, okay, and there's a few women as well. So do men behave more badly than women? Or are they worse bosses than women? I don't know the answer to that. I don't think that's true. I just don't think that we've seen enough of a sample size.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for, because it's and the percentages are absolutely true.
I mean, they're wild, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, no.
Right. So and for someone in your situation who might be writing about more male bad bosses than female bad bosses, the reality of your career has been you have had
I've worked for more men than women, right? So I'm not saying men are worse bosses than women, or women are worse bosses than men. I'm just saying, and a lot of it is, is drawn from my own personal experiences.
Right. Which makes it so rich, right? And so rich. And it's personalized and it's generalizable at the same time, because these are like we said, these are the profiles, these are the archetypes, and all the people that you have talked to and all the people who read the book, like they can identify, right? Like they can identify with one of these characters. And speaking of characters, because this is your creativeness, I love that you used to, like, you started this early with your mom would be like, how's Medusa? And how, like, early, like you had.
Listen, I talk to my mom every day, multiple times a day. She has all my career receipts. I was writing the book and she would say, didn't you forget this detail? This person did. And I was like, oh, Mom, thanks. Yeah.
She remembers. Yeah. Yeah. So everyone, I'm going to give you the name. So this is something to tease you. Mita's already mentioned the sheriff. We've mentioned Medusa. There is the devil, the napper, the white rabbit, the chopper, the great pretender, the grinner, the cheerleader, gossip girl, spotlight, and of course we talked about Tony, the Tony, right? Tony. I just love how you make them archetypes because again, so many people have had these experiences and you cannot, I mean, my experience too, coming up not through the traditional corporate business world, being more in the mental health and that organization world, you cannot get through it without having a supervisor, a manager, or a boss in any industry without coming across this. Like you just can't, because it's human nature.
Yeah. What's something that's been surprising is you talk about these archetypes. People have been gifting this book anonymously via Amazon to current and former bosses. So I thought that was like, wow. People have come up to me and I was like, I talked to someone today and they're like, oh yeah, I gifted it to my boss anonymously. I'm waiting for someone to send me a copy of my own book back.
See, look at that. You're still taking responsibility and ownership and like,
I have to. I have to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what, big picture, as you are someone who thinks about legacy and making an impact, this is part of your purpose. What do you want from this? What do you want? What do you want to come out of this piece of work being in the world in these discussions?
Yeah. I want people to read the book and think about one habit they have that might skew. I talked about mine, which is micromanaging, particularly under moments of stress. Yeah. And think about holding yourself accountable for that and watching for that in yourself. And a lot of that, as you would say, the foundation is self-awareness and, watching your own behaviors and actions, watching how people are reacting to you. I think that's all important. And one of the reasons I wrote the book is I've sat in a lot of leadership and development courses and created them throughout the years at large companies. And you're like, oh my God, is this what we're really teaching? Versus like, how much are we teaching leaders to take accountability for their behavior and what they're doing? And so I think that's why I put the book out into the world.
With a catchy title, with great characters, and it's true. I mean, I know that you've anonymized them enough, but this is like, it's fact and fiction, and entertainment all wrapped up in one thing. And educational.
Yes,
and educational.
That's the most. It is. It's not as someone said, I don't read fiction. And I said, it's a business book, but that's how I draw you in.
Exactly.
The stories.
Tell everyone where they can find the book, your website, everything that you are up to.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. The Devil Emails at Midnight, What Good Leaders Can Learn from Bad Bosses. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble's, your local independent bookstore. You can find me on MitaMallick.com, and I love LinkedIn. I love meeting new people. That's my preferred social media platform, so you can DM me there. And thanks so much for this awesome conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed it, and you really have a way of making everything very real and accessible and digestible. And I think that those are the magic ingredients.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mita is real. She speaks her truth, and it comes from an authentic place of experience and wanting to be the best leader she can be, and wanting us all to think about how we can be the same. Here are 5 key takeaways from this conversation. Number 1, bad bosses aren't born, they're made. Every leader has habits shaped by stress, insecurity, and unprocessed experiences. Awareness is the first responsibility of leadership. Number 2, your boss has more impact on your mental health than almost anyone else. Leadership is not a neutral role. It can heal or harm in lasting ways. Number 3, inclusion isn't a buzzword. It's about being seen. When people feel valued and safe, productivity naturally follows. Number 4, silence is never neutral. When harmful behavior goes unaddressed, it becomes normalized, whether we intend it or not. And number 5, the future of leadership is human. In an AI-driven world, empathy, rest, and self-awareness are not optional. They're essential and the differentiator. Thank you all for listening to this meaningful episode, this meaningful conversation. We are all leaders and we are all being led. Think about your behavior, the behavior of others, and how you want to show up and who you might want to give this book to. It puts a lot of our prior experiences into context and is inspiration for how we can show up differently. We are interested in what you think about this episode, so please feel free to leave us a comment at Dr. Dan Peters on Instagram or reply to any of our social posts. Thank you for listening, for being a part of our amazing community, for subscribing, and for your 5-star reviews. You make all the difference. Remember, we have this moment, this day, and this life. Let's make it a great one. This has been a Peters and Rossi production. Make It a Great One with Dr. Dan is produced by Laura Rossi. Our engineer is Phil Rossi. Theme music is Uplifting Folk by Awesome Music. Artwork by Kelly Dwyer. Follow us on social media at Dr. Dan Peters. For more information, visit drdanpeters.com.